Hey everyone, ready to dive into something that's probably been on your mind lately?
Oh, yeah,
Inflation. And
excellent.
just what in the world is going on with the global economy?
Yeah, it's a wild ride.
We've got some fascinating research to dig into today, and I'm excited to explore not just where things stand right now, but also what the future might hold.
Yeah,
And of course, what it all means for you.
that's the key takeaway, right?
Sure.
What does this mean for me?
So, inflation, it's been like that party guest who just won't take the hint.
Right. It's overstayed. It's welcome.
It's lingered way too long.
Yeah.
But the good news is projections are showing it might finally be starting to cool down a little
A little bit.
from 6.7% in 2023 to 5.4% in 2024.
That's what they're saying.
But does that mean like we can all breathe a sigh of relief and our grocery bills are about to shrink?
Well, hold on.
Okay.
Not so fast.
Okay.
While those numbers might sound like a reason to celebrate, it's important to remember we're talking about a slower rate of increase,
Yeah.
not an actual decrease in prices.
Okay.
So things are still getting more expensive, just not quite as quickly.
Right. So it's like instead of
Yeah, instead of a sprint, it's more of a jog.
okay. So a jog.
Yeah, but still uphill.
Still uphill. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. Well, so it's not just about that overall number then, right?
Right.
It's about how inflation is hitting different parts of the economy like differently.
Absolutely. In different parts of the world, too.
Ah, okay. So it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of situation globally either.
Not at all. In fact, we're seeing a pretty significant divergence between developed economies and emerging markets.
Okay. So what does that look like?
Well, developed economies are likely to see inflation continue to ease, but emerging markets might actually face even steeper increases.
Oh, wow. Okay. So why should people care about that?
Well, it has major implications for investors looking at opportunities abroad.
Makes sense.
For instance, let's say you're considering investing in a company operating in a developing economy.
Mm.
You need to factor in those potentially higher inflation rates to make sure you're making a sound decision.
So understanding the global picture is crucial.
It is, it's all interconnected.
Yeah. Now, I keep hearing this term core inflation
Yes.
being thrown around.
Yes.
And I get that it excludes like the volatile things like food and energy.
Right.
But what makes it so important in the grand scheme of things?
You see, core inflation, it reveals the stickier, more persistent price increases, particularly in services.
Okay.
So things like healthcare, education, or even those streaming subscriptions you love.
Oh, okay.
Those prices tend to be less responsive to shifts in monetary policy,
Great.
making them much harder to control.
So even if we see like relief at the gas pump,
Right.
it doesn't mean we're going to feel the same impact on other essential services.
Exactly. And that's why policymakers are keeping such a close eye on core inflation.
Okay.
It gives them a much clearer picture of the underlying inflationary pressures in the economy.
So we've got this inflation. It's cooling down, but not really going away.
Right.
It's impacting different sectors and regions differently.
Mm-hmm.
We're definitely dealing with a complex, interconnected web of factors here.
We are. And to make things even more complex, we can't ignore the elephant in the room,
Oh, boy.
the impact of global conflicts.
Yeah, the world just feels more volatile than ever these days.
Does it?
Conflicts seem to be erupting everywhere you turn.
Seems like it.
I have to ask, though,
Yeah.
how does a conflict happening like halfway across the world directly affect me here?
You know, that's a great question and one we should all be asking ourselves.
Yeah,
It's easy to feel detached from events that seem far away,
sure.
but the reality is that they can have a ripple effect that's felt globally. Take the war in Ukraine, for example.
Okay.
It's disrupted supply chains, particularly in Europe,
Makes sense.
leading to shortages and price hikes.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that like wheat and sunflower oil have just skyrocketed at the grocery store.
Yeah.
I never really connected that to the war before.
That's a prime example of how these seemingly distant events can hit us right in our wallets. Ukraine and Russia are major exporters of those commodities,
Okay.
and the war has thrown a massive wrench into getting those goods to market.
So even if we're not directly involved in the conflict,
Right.
we still feel the economic pain
We do.
through higher prices and limited access to certain goods.
It's a stark reminder of just how interconnected our world really is.
It is.
And it's not just Ukraine either.
Oh.
Think about the recent tensions in the Middle East,
Okay.
specifically the conflict between Palestine and Israel.
Wow.
This adds another layer of pressure on global trade routes, particularly through the Red Sea,
Mm-hmm.
which is a critical passage for energy and goods transportation.
So we've got these conflicts creating this domino effect,
It is a domino effect.
adding to the existing pressure from inflation.
Exactly.
That's a lot to process.
It is a lot to process, but it's important to look at the whole picture.
Right.
And remember that even amidst all this turbulence, there are glimmers of hope on the horizon.
Okay. I could definitely use a dose of optimism right now.
Yeah.
What encouraging signs are you seeing?
Well, for starters, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund,
Yes.
is projecting that global growth will stabilize
Okay.
at around 3.2%
Okay.
for both 2024 and 2025.
Okay, so that sounds like a step in the right direction.
It does.
But I'm curious, considering all this uncertainty we've been talking about, are those projections, like, realistic?
That's a fair question.
Yeah.
You know, those projections, they do offer a glimmer of hope, but I think it's essential to view them with a healthy dose of cautious optimism.
Okay.
The IMF itself acknowledges that there are numerous risks and uncertainties out there,
Right.
including, the potential for further geopolitical tensions
Yeah.
and the possibility of persistent inflation.
Right.
So it's not guaranteed smooth sailing by any means.
Okay, so it's kind of like navigating a ship through a storm.
That's a good analogy.
There's the possibility of calmer waters ahead. Yeah. But we still need to be prepared for those choppy seas.
Precisely. And that preparation includes really understanding the forces at play, both the positive and the negative.
Gotcha. Okay, so we've got this projected growth.
Yeah?
But I'm also hearing talk about central banks shifting to something called looser monetary policies.
Yes.
I've always been a little fuzzy on what that actually means.
So essentially, looser monetary policy means making it easier for people and businesses to borrow money.
Oh, okay.
It can help to stimulate economic activity, encouraging investment and spending.
So it's kind of like turning up the heat to get that economic engine running a bit faster.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay.
But it's a delicate balancing act.
Okay. How so?
Well, one of the biggest concerns with looser monetary policy is that it could cause inflation to come roaring back.
Ah, so it's like adding fuel to a fire that's already smoldering.
Exactly.
So policymakers are walking a tightrope here,
They are.
trying to stimulate growth without reigniting that inflation fire.
That's the challenge.
That sounds like a tough one.
It's a global challenge, but let's not get bogged down in the complexities just yet.
Okay.
Instead, why don't we shift our focus to something a bit more empowering?
All right.
Let's explore some potential solutions.
Okay.
Strategies, approaches that offer a way forward.
Sounds good to me. Honestly, up until now, it's all felt a little overwhelming.
I understand that feeling.
Yeah.
But there are reasons to be hopeful.
Okay.
There are steps we can take both individually and collectively to navigate these challenges and actually create a more resilient and prosperous future.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into those solutions.
All right.
Let's hear what we can do to turn this ship around.
So where do we go from here?
Yeah, what can we actually do? Like, what are the tangible actions?
Right. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, but I think there are things we can do.
Okay.
And we can break it down into three main areas.
Okay.
Technological innovation,
Okay.
embracing sustainable practices, and fostering global cooperation.
Okay, let's start with technology. I'm always fascinated by how innovation can really reshape the world.
Me too.
So how can it help us with these economic pressures, especially like those supply chain disruptions we've been talking about?
Imagine a world where AI-powered systems predict shifts in demand, optimize logistics, and identify potential bottlenecks before they even happen.
So basically a smarter, more adaptable system.
Exactly, one that keeps those essential goods flowing.
Okay, so instead of cargo ships stuck at sea and empty shelves at the store,
Right.
we've got things running smoothly.
Exactly, a much more resilient system.
I like the sound of that, especially after the past few years.
Yeah.
What about sustainability, though?
Yes.
I tend to think of that more in terms of environmental impact.
And you're right, sustainability is absolutely crucial for protecting our planet.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Yep.
Investing in sustainable practices can actually unlock new economic opportunities.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and contribute to a more resilient system overall.
Could you give me an example?
Sure, consider the renewable energy sector. As we transition away from fossil fuels, there's going to be a surge in demand for innovative technologies and skilled workers in areas like solar, wind, geothermal energy.
So this shift, it creates jobs,
Yes.
boosts local economies,
Absolutely.
but also reduces our dependence on those volatile global energy markets.
Exactly, which, as we've seen, can be heavily influenced by things like geopolitical events.
So it's like hitting two birds with one stone.
It is.
We're moving towards a cleaner energy future
Yes.
while bolstering the economy and reducing our reliance on those potentially unstable sources.
Absolutely a win-win-win.
Okay, now the last piece you mentioned was global cooperation.
Right.
In today's world, with all the tension and clashing national interests,
Yeah.
that feels like a really tall order.
It is challenging, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Getting nations to work together on a global scale is never easy,
Right.
especially when those short-term gains often seem to overshadow the long-term benefits. But the truth is, these challenges we're talking about, inflation, supply chain disruptions, climate change,
Right.
they don't respect borders.
Yeah.
They demand collaborative solutions.
It's like trying to solve a pandemic by focusing only on national borders.
Exactly. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
We need a coordinated global effort to stabilize trade, harmonize economic policies, and share knowledge and resources effectively.
So it's like a global symphony orchestra.
I like that analogy.
If every musician just plays their own tune with any regard for the conductor or the other musicians,
Yeah.
it's just chaos.
Total chaos.
But when they work together in harmony, following that conductor's lead,
Yeah.
they create a masterpiece.
Exactly. A beautiful symphony.
But how do we actually conduct this global economic orchestra?
Right. Where do we even begin?
Yeah.
Well, I think it starts with recognizing that international organizations like the United Nations and the World Trade Organization, despite their flaws and bureaucratic hurdles, they do provide those essential platforms for dialogue and cooperation. Okay. They may not always move as quickly as we'd like,
Right.
but they represent our best hope for finding that common ground and working towards solutions that actually benefit everyone.
So it's about using those existing structures, however imperfect they may be, to encourage that collaboration.
Exactly. And it can't just be about governments talking to each other.
Right. It can't just be top down.
It has to involve everyone.
Okay.
Businesses, civil society organizations, individuals.
Yeah.
We all have a role to play.
So what can we do?
Well, you can support companies that align with your values.
Okay.
You know, those committed to ethical and sustainable practices. You can engage in constructive dialogue with people from different backgrounds, different cultures. Advocate for policies that prioritize international collaboration.
So it's about collective action, everybody doing their part.
It is.
Understanding that those seemingly small actions can actually add up to something bigger.
Exactly. It's recognizing our interconnectedness and working together to create a more just and equitable and prosperous world for all.
That's a beautiful vision.
It's a symphony worth composing.
It is. I love that perspective.
Yeah.
It's a powerful reminder that we're not just passive bystanders in this global economic drama.
Right.
We can be active participants in shaping a better future.
Absolutely.
But before we get carried away with the orchestral metaphors, let's bring it back down to earth for a minute.
Okay.
Let's recap what we've talked about so far.
Right.
So we started by delving into inflation, how it's easing but not really going away,
Right.
and how it's impacting different sectors and regions in unique ways.
Exactly.
Then we added that extra layer of complexity by examining how global conflicts like the war in Ukraine and the tensions in the Middle East are disrupting those supply chains and fueling that inflationary fire.
Absolutely. Those are major factors.
And it felt a bit like we were descending into this vortex of doom and gloom for a while there.
It did a bit.
But then we emerged from the darkness.
Yeah.
And we shifted our focus to those potential solutions.
Right. We explored technological innovation, the power of sustainable practices, and the critical importance of global cooperation.
And I think throughout this entire conversation, the overarching message has been one of cautious optimism.
It has.
We face significant challenges, but there are reasons to believe we can navigate these turbulent waters.
I agree.
And emerge stronger on the other side.
I think it's crucial, though, to avoid falling into the trap of just passively riding the waves.
Right. We can't just sit back and hope for the best.
We have to be active participants in shaping the future we want.
So, knowing all of this is one thing. But how can our listeners actually use this information?
Right.
How can they apply it to their lives, their decisions, their futures?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's one we're going to delve into in our next segment.
Okay, good. Because it's one thing to understand the big picture.
Right.
But it's even more empowering to know how we can each play a part
Exactly.
in shaping a more positive future.
We'll explore how this understanding of the global economic landscape can really empower individuals to make those informed choices.
Awesome.
Whether it's about their personal finances, their career paths, or even their role as engaged citizens in this rapidly changing world.
Okay. I'm looking forward to unpacking that.
So we've talked about the complexities of the global economic picture, inflation conflicts, potential solutions.
Yeah, a lot to take in.
But now let's bring it all home.
Okay.
How can understanding all of this empower our listeners to make informed choices in their own lives?
That's the question, right?
It is. And I think it starts with recognizing that knowledge is power.
Okay, I like that.
The more we understand about the forces shaping our world, the better equipped we are to navigate them effectively.
That makes sense, but it's easy to feel overwhelmed by just the sheer amount of information out there.
Oh, absolutely.
So where should our listeners even begin?
Well, I think one practical step is to start viewing everyday decisions through this global lens.
Okay.
For example, when you're making investment choices, don't just look at your local market.
Okay.
Consider how global trends like those diverging inflation rates we discussed earlier might impact your portfolio.
So diversify.
Exactly.
Think about opportunities in regions that might be less affected by certain economic pressures.
Right. Think globally.
Okay.
And it's not just about investing either.
Okay.
Think about career choices as well. As we shift towards a more sustainable future, certain sectors are inevitably going to grow while others decline.
Right.
So understanding those trends can really help you position yourself for success in the long run.
So if someone's thinking about a career change,
Yeah,
they might want to explore fields related to renewable energy,
absolutely.
sustainable agriculture,
Yes.
or even like ethical supply chain management.
Those are all areas that are poised for significant growth as the world grapples with climate change and resource scarcity.
It's pretty amazing to think that our individual career choices can actually contribute to a larger, more sustainable future.
They absolutely can.
And it's not just about those big career shifts either, right?
Yeah.
It's about those small, everyday decisions.
Exactly.
Like supporting businesses that align with your values.
Yeah.
Whether it's local farmers who are committed to sustainable practices, or companies that prioritize ethical sourcing and fair labor standards.
It's about putting your money where your mouth is.
Right. Voting with our wallets.
Exactly. Making conscious choices that reflect the kind of world we want to live in.
And we can't forget the power of our voices either.
Oh, absolutely.
Engaging in those conversations with friends, family, colleagues.
Yes.
About these issues, sharing what we've learned, challenging those assumptions, encouraging critical thinking.
It's about sparking those conversations, raising awareness, and collectively pushing for positive change.
And of course, there's the power of the ballot box.
Absolutely.
Voting for leaders who prioritize sustainability, global cooperation, and economic justice.
It all adds up.
So these are all tangible things we can do.
Yeah, sure.
Steps that move beyond just understanding the issues.
Right.
To actually influencing the course of events.
And that's what's so empowering about this knowledge.
I love that.
It's not just about feeling informed. It's about feeling empowered to act, to make a difference.
It's about shifting from that sense of overwhelm to a sense of agency.
Exactly.
Knowing that we're not just passive observers in this global drama,
Right.
but active participants in shaping the future.
And remember, even those small actions, when multiplied across millions of individuals, can create a ripple effect that leads to profound change.
That's a powerful thought to end on.
It is.
I hope our listeners walk away from this deep dive feeling not just informed, but also inspired and empowered to make a difference.
I hope so too. It's been a pleasure diving into these topics with you.
Likewise, and to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the global economic landscape. We hope you found it insightful and engaging, and most importantly, empowering.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.
And remember, the future is ours to create. Thanks for listening.